Hello students, today I am there with you taking another topic from grammar, speech, which is also called narration. Dear students, before we start discussing about the types of speech, let's know what the speech is. Dear students, speech is the communication or expression of thoughts in spoken words. In other words, we can say that the exchange of spoken words is called speech or narration. Now, let's get to know about the types of speech. You might have heard many times that speech is of two kinds: direct speech and indirect speech. Let's understand both of them with the help of this example. As you can see in the first diagram, that two boys are exchanging their thoughts. They are doing conversation. The first boy tells him, "I fell down the stairs." These are the exact words what the boy has told to the other boy. So this one is called direct speech. And when you see the second diagram, here you watch that a boy and a girl are doing conversation. Here, the boy from first diagram goes to the girl and tells her that what the first boy told him. And he told about the first boy that he said that he had fallen down the stairs. So, by the second speech, it is clear that here the words of other persons are spoken by someone. So it is called indirect speech. In this way, we can say that in direct speech, the actual words of the speaker are written. And when we see the indirect speech, it is clear that indirect speech is used to speak what someone has said without quoting it. Let's again understand it with the help of this example. The example of direct speech. They said, "We have bought a cake." When you convert the same sentence into indirect speech, you write, "They said that they had bought a cake." So looking the example, it is clear that in direct speech, we always use the actual words what the speaker has said. And when we say the same words in our language to other one, we use indirect speech. And most of the words are changed here. Let's get to know about the terms of direct and indirect speech. See this example. He said to me, "I study daily." In this example, the first portion in which the speaker and the listener is present, that is called reporting speech. And the verb which has come between them, that is called reporting verb. What is spoken by the speaker, that is written in inverted commas, and that is called reported speech. So, he said to me, this part is called reporting speech, because here he is reporting something to me, means he is telling something to me. And I study daily. This is reported speech, which is being reported by the speaker. Now let's see some rules from changing a sentence from direct to indirect speech. Dear students, always remember that whenever we convert from direct to indirect speech, reporting verb is having the following changes, like say is changed into tell, says becomes tells, will say or shall say becomes will tell or shall tell, said becomes told. The other changes are, as you see, that in direct speech, the actual words of the speaker are written in inverted commas. So when we convert this into indirect speech, these inverted commas, comma, and also to, which is connecting speaker to the listener, are removed. And as a connector, that is used to connect reporting speech to reported speech. And also remember that if the reporting verb is in present tense or in future tense, that means if the reporting verb is says, say, will say, or shall say, the tense of reported speech will not change. Let's understand with the help of this example. If the direct speech is Ria says to me, I am writing a letter, then it is clear that the reporting verb says is in present tense and it will be converted into tells while converting into indirect speech. So the indirect speech is Ria tells me that she is writing a letter. This is indirect speech. And here you watch that because the reporting verb is in present tense, the tense of reported speech, which is also present tense, is not changed while converting into indirect speech. When we read direct speech, we see that in reported speech, am is used with I to represent present tense. And while converting into indirect speech, is used with she, which is also present tense. One more thing to note is, in direct speech, I is written. The sentence is, I am writing a letter. So who is writing a letter? Speaker or listener? Tell me, who is the speaker? Ria. And who is the listener? Who is listening Ria? Me. So the thing which you have to remember while converting from direct to indirect speech is this, that you have to check that the pronouns or adjectives which have come in indirect speech are used for the speaker or for the listener. So let's try. In direct speech, I is written. Come on, think. I is used for whom? Ria says to me I am writing a letter. So, for whom has Riya used I? Riya used I for herself, or she used I for me? Got the answer? Yes, Riya used I for Riya only. And because Riya is third person singular and she is a girl, that's why which pronoun we will use for Riya in indirect speech? She. Yes, she. That's why I will be converted into she. And because for representing present tense, we cannot use am with she. So we have used is with she to represent present tense. And while converting from direct to indirect speech, we have omitted or removed comma also, inverted commas also, and to also, which is telling the connection of Riya to me. Riya says to me. Dear students, now let's see what happens when the reporting verb is in past tense. That means if your reporting verb is said. This you know very well, that said will become told normally while converting into indirect speech. But what are the other changes that will happen? Always remember, if your reporting verb is in past tense, the tense of reported speech will change in the following way. The first change is, if in your direct speech you see first form of the verb or as, es or ies is added to the first form of the verb, or you have do plus v1 or does plus v1. In this case, when you convert into indirect speech, you will get v2, which represents second form of the verb. Let's understand it with the help of this example. In first example, direct speech is, he said to me, I study English. So you see that here reporting verb said is in past tense, which is converted into told when we convert from direct to indirect speech. And this is the reason that the reported speech is converted into past tense. Dear students, always remember that if your reporting verb is in past tense, the tense of reported speech will also be in past tense, excepting some rules. So, in direct speech, study is V1. When we convert it into indirect speech, it becomes studied. In direct speech, I is used as a pronoun. So now you have to think that I is used for the speaker, he, or for the listener, me. So, do you know I is used for whom? Yes, I is used for he, who is speaking in reporting speech. And this is only the reason that I is converted into he when we converted direct speech into indirect speech. So finally, the indirect speech of first example is, he told me that he studied English. Now see the second example. He said to me, Ram studies English. Here IES is added to study, which is the example of verb's first form plus S or ES or IES. When we convert this verb into indirect speech, it becomes studied according to the rule. And so, what is the indirect speech? He told me that Ram studied English. Remember, we are always using that as a connector to connect reporting speech to reported speech. Now let's see the third example. He said to me, "Do you study English?" Here, verb is do plus study, which becomes studied in indirect speech. And remember, this is rule that when we convert into indirect speech, the interrogative sentence becomes affirmative or negative. It means the questions are converted into assertive sentences. So, the indirect speech of third example is, he asked me if I studied English. Here, asked is used in place of said because this is a question and question mark is removed, and in place of question mark we have used full stop, and in place of that as a connector we have used if. This I will explain you in detail in my next video of speech. Now let's see fourth example. Here he said to me, "Does Ram study English?" So here verb is does plus study. So when we convert into indirect speech, we get, he asked me if Ram studied English. Now if in direct speech we have is or am or are, we get was or were while converting into indirect speech. Let's understand with the help of this example. He said to me, "I am studying English." Here am has come. So when we convert into indirect speech, the sentence we get is, he told me that he was studying English. So am becomes was in indirect speech. Now see the third point. If in direct speech we have has or have, when we convert into indirect speech we get had. Let's understand with the help of this example. He said to me, "I have studied English." When we convert it into indirect speech, we get, he told me that he had studied English. Here, have is converted into had. Last example. He said to me, "Ram has studied English." When we convert it into indirect, we get, he told me that Ram had studied English. Here has is converted into had. Now according to fourth point, if we get second form of the verb, that means V2 or did plus V1 in direct speech, it is converted into had plus V3 in indirect speech. Let's see the example. He said to me, "I studied English." When we convert into indirect speech, we get, he told me that he had studied English. Here, studied is converted into had studied, and I is converted into he because I is used for the speaker he. Now the second example, he said to me, did Ram study English? When we convert into indirect speech, we get he asked me if Ram had studied English. Here, did study is converted into had studied. Fifth point, if in direct speech we have was or were, when we convert into indirect speech, it is converted into two ways. First one is, if was or were is used to show some action, then it is converted into had been. See the example? He said to me, I was studying English. When we convert into indirect speech, it becomes he told me that he had been studying English. Here, after was, studying is used, which is representing an action. That's why was is converted into had been. But if was or were does not show an action, then when we convert into indirect speech, was or were remain was or were only. Let's see the example. He said to me. The name of the movie was Dangal. When we convert into indirect speech, we write, he told me that the name of the movie was Dangal. So here, after was, noun is coming. So there is no change in was. Now sixth point. If in direct speech we have had plus V3, and according to seventh point, if we have had been, then when we convert into indirect speech, there is no change. Had plus V3 remains had plus V3 only, and had been remains had been only. Like in first example, it is written, he said to me, I had studied English. In indirect speech, it becomes, he told me that he had studied English. No change in verb. And the second example, he said to me, I had been studying English since morning. When we convert into indirect speech, it becomes, he told me that he had been studying English since morning. No change in verb. Now see eighth point. If in direct speech we have will or shall, when we convert into indirect speech, it becomes would. See the example. He said to me, I shall study English. When we convert into indirect speech, it becomes, he told me that he would study English. Here, shall is converted into would. And every time I is converted into he because I is used for the speaker he. Now, ninth point. If in direct speech you have come, when we convert into indirect speech, it becomes go. But remember, after come, any word should come. Like in this example, adverb here has come. See the example. He said to me, come here. So when we convert into indirect speech, it becomes, he ordered me to go there. Here come has become go, and here, which is an adverb, is converted into there. And this should also be noted that the word which comes after come, it should show nearness. As in this example, HERE here adverb is showing nearness. Now dear students, other than the verbs, there are many words that are changed when we convert direct speech into indirect speech. These words may be modals, adjectives, adverbs, etc. See 9th point. If can comes in direct speech, it becomes could in indirect speech. See the example. Direct speech. He said to me, I can do my work. Indirect speech. He told me that he could do his work. 10th point. If in direct speech we have may, it becomes might in indirect speech. See the example. He said to me, I may help you. When we convert into indirect, it becomes he told me that he might help me. Here, you is used for the listener, me. That's why it is converted into me. 11th point. If in direct speech we have must and it is showing some compulsion or necessity, then in indirect speech it becomes had to. As in the example, direct speech is he said to me, I must attend the class. Indirect speech is he told me that he had to attend the class. 12th point. If this is written, it is converted into that. As in the example, he said to me, this is my pen. Indirect speech is he told me that that was his pen. Now 13th point, which I have already explained you, that if here comes in direct speech, it becomes there. You can see the example. Now 14th point. If now comes in direct speech, it becomes then in indirect speech. As in the example, he said to me, we shall write the answer now. Indirect speech, he told me that he would write the answer then. 15th point. If today comes in direct speech, it becomes that day in indirect speech. Example, in direct speech, he said to me, I shall complete my work today. Indirect speech, he told me that he would complete his work that day. 16th point. If yesterday is written in direct speech, it becomes the previous day in indirect speech. Example, direct speech. He said to me, I had completed my work yesterday. Indirect speech, he told me that he had completed his work the previous day. 17th point. If in direct speech we have tomorrow, then in indirect speech it becomes the next day. See the example. Direct speech. He said to me, I shall go to Kerala tomorrow. Indirect speech. He told me that he would go to Kerala the next day. 18th point. If last night, last day, last Sunday, such adverbs come in direct speech, when we convert into indirect speech, it may change into the night before, the day before, or the Sunday before. Let's see the example. Direct speech. He said to me, I went to the party last night. Indirect speech. He told me that he had gone to the party the night before. In this way only, if any other day's name written, like Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, the changes will be same. If Tuesday comes, it will become the Tuesday before, the Wednesday before, if Wednesday comes. So, if any other day's name come, you change them in the same way. Last point, if ago comes in direct speech, it becomes before in indirect speech. Example, direct speech. He said to me, he was born 15 years ago. Indirect speech, he told me that he had been born 15 years before. So dear students, hope you all have understood. I will come with my next video on speech very soon. Here I am presenting some questions for your practice. Write their answers in the comment box. Watch this video many times to understand the rules and solve as many examples as possible. Thank you very much for listening me. Please write the answers of these questions in the comment box.